now.
Okay, good evening, everybody who's joining us. Happy New Year. This is the Thursday, January 7th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting, first commission meeting of 2021. So Noah will provide some information on protocol and how to access this meeting if you'd like to contribute. And Noah?
Thank you, Chair Hogan. Thank you, commissioners. Happy 2021 to everyone. For members of the public who are in the attendees watching our webinar right now live with us on the Zoom link, you can participate in the meeting by using the raise hand function located at the bottom of your screen. The chair will call on people when we're having public comment, and we'll ask for members of the public who'd like to speak on an issue, and then you can raise your hand and we'll call on you and ask you to unmute yourself, and you'll be given 2 minutes to speak. For members of the public who are watching us on YouTube, you can participate by going to the city's website and clicking on meetings and agendas, which will take you to PrimeGov, and you can click on the agenda for tonight's Planning Commission meeting, and there'll be a link for the Zoom. That will be your way to become an attendee as well. And you can go ahead and use the raise hand function that I spoke of. For people who are calling in who are attendees, you can press the *9 button to raise your hand, and we'll call on you as soon as it's your turn. And we won't reveal your whole number. We'll probably reveal just like the first digits of your number so that you know it's your turn to speak. And then once the public hearing portion is closed, we will end the public comment. So with that, that is how you participate. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Noah. Appreciate that. Melissa, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes, Vice Chair Hogan.
I'm here.
Commissioner Clow. Commissioner Clow.
Muted, Commissioner Clow.
Present, sorry.
Thank you. Commissioner Faulkner.
Here.
Commissioner Garcia.
Here.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Here.
Commissioner Lawrence.
Here.
Commissioner Satenia.
Here.
Mr. Chair, a quorum is present.
Thank you. Next order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. And we've been saying that sort of individually, but tonight I would like all of us to say it together, if you don't mind. So I'll lead off with I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is the approval of the agenda. Is there any changes by staff?
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, staff has no changes to the agenda tonight.
Any changes from the commission?
Commissioner Faulkner to approve.
Okay.
Commissioner Clow, second.
First and second. Melissa, we take roll call.
Yes, Commissioner Clow.
Yes.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia.
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence.
Yes.
Commissioner Satenia.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Next item, approval of the minutes and findings of conclusions of law of the minutes of November 19th. Any changes from the commission? None. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve the November 19th, 2020 minutes. Commissioner
Satania, the second.
Thank you. Going on to December 3rd, any changes? Okay.
I would recommend, since we went ahead and did a motion with one set, to go ahead and vote on that before we move on to the next
Thank you. Good point.
batch.
Okay, so I'd like to take a vote or a roll call on that, Melissa.
Yes, Commissioner Clow,
Yes.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Satania.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Sally, for future reference, could we have talked or just asked for changes on either of those and then voted as one motion?
Chair Hogan, I'm generally not super formal, but since they're separate agenda items, I would like totally separate agenda items. I would do them separate.
Okay, I was just looking at them under item D.
Yeah, since they're set out as D1 and D2, it's probably better to do separate votes.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to be clear on that with taking a roll call on this, it sort of drags out, but
I hear you.
but knowing that, that's okay. Under old business, I believe we have none. So the first case of new business is 2020-2896.
I apologize for the interruption, but I think we still do need to do that agenda item D2.
Thank you for paying attention. Okay, we need a vote on agenda item D2.
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes of December 3rd.
I'll second Janet Clow.
Okay, Commissioner Clow,
Yes.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Satania.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Okay, thank you. Now we're moving on to new business, case 2020-2896. Lee?
Lee, you're muted.
And I recommend that somebody kind of read the caption. It could be the chair or Lee would be fine too, but.
I'm ready to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Happy New Year. So my first case I'm bringing for you tonight is case number 2020-2896. It is 5201 Beckner Road Final Subdivision. Jenkins Gavin, agent for Abacus Fund LLC, the owners, is requesting approval of a final subdivision plat for 5 lots at 5201 Beckner Road. The property is zone C2. It's in the Los Solares master plan area and is in zone 4 of the Cerrillos Highway Corridor Protection District. It's 36.35 acres. The commission just considered this before as a preliminary plat and development plan on November 5th, so not too long ago. It is a pretty simple subdivision. You noticed in your packet, the subdivision itself is only like 5 pages. That's because the vast bulk of the detail is in the development plan, which you considered before. And of course, that comes back in subphases. So I'm going to keep my presentation really short here. Just as you know, one of the lots will be for the residential development. That's phase 1. And then phase 2 are the 4 commercial lots that front Cerrillos Road. And I'm pretty much going to leave it at that and let Jennifer present more about the case. Staff does recommend approval of this final subdivision plat. And that's
Mark, you're muted.
That helps. Okay, assuming there's no questions for Mr. Logsdon, we'll move on to the presentation by the applicant. Ms. Jenkins?
Hi, Ms. Jenkins, may I swear you in, please?
Yes.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Jennifer Jenkins, 130 Grant Avenue, Suite 101, Santa Fe 87501.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Good evening. Happy New Year. Acting Chair Hogan and Commissioners, I'm Jennifer Jenkins here on behalf of Abacus for approval of the final subdivision plat for the mixed use project at 5201 Beckner Road. And as Lee mentioned, we were before you in early November for development plan and preliminary subdivision plat approval. I do have a presentation that is queued up and ready to go. but I would like to state that we are in agreement with all staff conditions and technical corrections. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions. I think that, like I said, we went over, a lot of detail at the last hearing. So it might be best use of our time and I do have some imagery that I could pull up in response to any questions that you might have.
Thank you. What are the wishes of the commission? Would you like to see the presentation or just go directly to questions?
I'm fine with going directly to questions. I am too.
Okay, Sally, any procedural problem with that?
No, not at all. We can do questions of staff and the applicant and then open up for public hearing. I think we've been doing public hearing first. I might defer to Mr. Burke because I know that is how we've been conducting these, I believe.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sally. I would recommend that we continue to do what we've been doing in the past, which would be staff, applicant, members of the public, and then questions from the commission.
Very good. Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody from the public that would like to testify? No, is there anybody online or in the wings?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I don't see anybody raising their hand right now, but if any members of the public would like to speak to this issue, please raise your hand right now. Use the raise hand function. Otherwise, it's up to the chair if we want to wait any longer.
Okay, if there's no raised hands, we'll go on to questions from the commission.
Chair, will we close the public comment also?
I'm sorry, yes. Procedurally, I'm a little off tonight. Sorry about that. Yeah, so that concludes the public hearing, and now we'll move on to questions. Okay. Can I hear a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Commissioner Faulkner.
Oh,
Clow, second. Yeah.
We have a motion and a second. Melissa?
Yes. Commissioner Clow,
Yes.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Satania.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
And Chair, there would also be a second motion to approve the findings of facts and conclusions of law for case 2020-2896.
Motion to approve as read by staff. Commissioner Clow, second.
You have a motion and a second, Melissa?
Yes. Commissioner Clow,
Yes.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez, Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Satania.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank
Okay.
you, everyone.
That was even faster than last time.
I did.
I
We set
know
a new
Jennifer's
record.
breaking records, man. Way to go, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, next we'll be hearing case 2020-2897, 4262 Agua Fria Street and 4107 Rufina Street, Aguafina. Preliminary Agua Fria, is that Aguafina preliminary subdivision?
And Chair, I do believe that this will be heard in the same hearing with the third agenda item here for 4702 Rufina Street, because they're being presented as a single subdivision, even though they're separate case numbers.
Okay, so that is case number 2020-2915.
Yes.
4702 Rufina Street. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. The case captions and the names are a mouthful on these, but as Sally just said, it is a single subdivision, but a dual case. The first one is 2020-2897 involving 4262 Agua Fria and 4701 Rufina. And 46 lots kind of skipping through the caption a little bit, but they're basically requesting a subdivision approval. That particular case concerns 46 lots on 2 parcels that are zoned R5 and total about 9 acres. The second part of the case, 2020-2915, is specifically for 4702 Rufina Street. That is also a preliminary subdivision. This one is 15 single-family residential lots on 4702 Rufina, zoned R6. In both these cases, the overall case, Liaison Planning Services is the agent for Aquafina Development Company, LLC, who is the owner. So once again, to try and simplify that, it is 61 lots on 3 tracts of land totaling 11.47 acres. It was divided up into a second case procedurally and to tie the different portions of it to the specific zoning and so forth. So I'll leave most of the presentation up to the applicant's agent, Dolores Vigil, but I'll just say briefly that you, the commission, considered the rezoning of properties and then a rezoning amendment request regarding conditions of how all 3 properties could be developed back on August 20th last year, and you recommended approval to the governing body. The applicant did go on to the governing body who considered this on October 22nd last year. And the governing body did approve the rezonings of the 2 southern properties, as well as the requested amendment to the conditions of approval that regarded how the properties could be developed. Governing body did one thing different from the commission's recommendation to the governing body, is that the governing body did retain the condition or the portion of the condition to not connect to Powerline Road. They added a condition regarding site-built homes, which, as we discussed last time, is one of the desires of the neighbors. And the governing body also specifically asked that the PC or the Planning Commission consider take up consideration of a wall fence, which has been kind of an ongoing negotiation between the applicant and the neighbors. So once again, the governing body approved the requests, and therefore the applicant is before you now with the subdivision request. They are proposing an innovative street design. In my staff report, you probably noticed that I said it's in the applicant Exhibit E. I actually neglected to put it in there. I apologize for that. It's essentially the applicant's justification for it. I have that on my computer tonight, and I can certainly bring that up in question and answer if anybody wants to see it. And I think most things really are with this case, are gonna be better handled in question and answer. I do just wanna say that I did hear from 2 residents, too late to include it in your packet, but I promised them I would make mention of their concerns. I heard from a Paul Lucero, who is one of the adjacent neighbors, and he reiterated his desire for a wall and asked that a wall between Las Acequias and the new development be a requirement. And then I also heard from Ken Cast, who he said he wasn't sure if he was going to attend. I don't see him in the attendees. I'll briefly run through his concerns. He sent me an email too late again to include. He had 5 concerns. The first one was that, his comments wouldn't make it into the official commentary. That's why I'm relaying it now. He was confused on the letter of intent. I'll let the applicant discuss this more, but just to put it as briefly as possible, there was a Dropbox link provided to some of the residents so they could access the plans because they're too big to email. In that Dropbox link, there was a letter of intent that was in error. It starts off talking about the 61 lot subdivision we're here to talk about, but then the rest of the text of that letter is in reference to the original 23 lot 3 dead end subdivision. It was just, the letter was kind of grievously in error, and he was concerned about that, but I assured him that the letter in your packets is accurate and everything that you've considered and the public has had access to is correct. His third concern was the way we're splitting up the cases. He was concerned that that's somehow a way to, not examine all the traffic together. But I explained to him procedurally why we've divided that southern tract into a separate case. And that, I've discussed with the applicant, the TIAs and so forth, and that's not the intent to confuse anybody. His fourth concern was that in the packet, he says there's a reference to a change of the property line in 2012. I do not know what he's talking about. Maybe Dolores can help us out there a little later, but it apparently is tied up in the conversation over the fence and property lines. So I would like for the applicant to address that concern, because I don't have a whole lot to say in response to Ken's concern there, because I don't know. Finally, he had a final concern about getting the site-built homes procedurally, and I assured him, I said, I don't know what else to tell you. The applicants agreed to do it. The governing body required it. We're conditioning it now, and it will be done. So I guess just a final concern as to whether that will actually happen. And that was it for their comments. And I will leave it at that for my presentation, because like I said, I think there will be some question and answer. Staff does recommend approval of the preliminary subdivision. And thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Good evening, Mr. Hill. How are you tonight?
Good evening. I'm great. Happy New Year, everyone. Glad to see everyone tonight. I'm here representing the applicant, Agua Fria Development LLC. Do I need to be sworn in?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, please raise your hand. You swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Dolores?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes. Dolores V. Hill, Liaison Planning, PO Box 1835, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87504.
Thank you.
And we'd like you to redo the Happy New Year just now that we know you're official. It's legitimate.
Okay, thank you. Happy New Year, everyone. I proceed?
Yes.
Okay. I do have a plan that I'd like to share, if I may, to just go over briefly, and the preliminary plat that we're all aware of what it is. I know a lot of you have already seen it, but I think it's important to add it to the record. So if I may do a share screen, Noah, I'd appreciate it.
The share screen is enabled.
Thank you. All right, let me minimize this so I can see it. So as you know, this is a 61 lot subdivision. It's gone through many iterations, and in doing so, we've come up with a plan that we feel fits within the neighborhood and what was discussed with the neighbors throughout the many meetings that we've had, ENNs and otherwise. We've had private meetings outside of the ENN process. And so I'd like to just show you what it looks like. If you look to the left of your screen where my little hand is, this is Agua Fria Street. And this will access the 28 lot for track C1. So there's 28 lots with a paved road with landscaping, sidewalks. There's some open space here that will be used for ponding. There is hydrants. There will be a turnaround over here between lots 26 and 27 that will be utilized for solid waste. And also, as you keep going south, you will see there is a tract B, which is designated for Powerline Road. And then as you come down to the second half of the site plan, Tract B, here is Powerline Road. Powerline Road will be accessed primarily for the adjacent property owner to the west of the subdivision. Also, it is going to be used for emergency access for lots C1 and lot C2. C2, tract C2, is comprised of 18 lots. And as you go through, and it will be designated Agua Lane, and as you go through, you will see that it hooks up with Rufina Street. And then further across Rufina Street, you'll see Casa de Toros. And that track, and that's track B1. Track B1 has 15 lots. All these lots are no less than 4,000 square feet. Some are over 6,000 square feet. They vary in size. Casa de Toros is another subdivision to the south of Agua that will hook up with this subdivision eventually. We have made application for this subdivision also, and we've worked diligently to work with the applicant on that property so that the road design will hook up and meet the standards for the innovative road design. We are proposing 12 affordable units and lots. Those are not designated at this time, but we will work with staff and affordable housing to come up with a plan that shows which lots will be designated for affordable housing. I'd like to open it up for questions because I know there's quite a few, and let's just, going. I could share this again if you'd like. But I also have photographs of fencing out there that we could use in our discussion. And also a worksheet that we could use for showing you where the fencing actually is and what that linear feet is comprised of.
Okay.
One more thing. I also have, as you can see, I have Carl Sommer, who's here, who would like to answer some questions if you have any. Orlin Guerrero Ortiz, Maury Walker. He's not here yet, but he's going to try to get here at some point. So I stand for questions. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sure have questions. I'm interested in hearing about the innovative road design that you've proposed.
Chair, did we want to go ahead and move to questions from the floor and open up to public comment before we started into the details?
Well, I was thinking that since Ms. Hill is not looking to go through her whole presentation, that we just try to draw out the specifics that the commission's interested in and then go to public hearings so that they're a more robust discussion.
And I would like to see the fence design,
Okay.
Commissioner Cloud, before we go to public comment.
Any other requests? Can you respond to those, Dolores? Dolores?
Sure. Chair Hogan and Commissioner Cloud, we do not have a fence. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hello?
Dolores, your connection
Hello?
Dolores, your connection's kind of lagging and a little choppy.
Okay.
We can hear you now.
We can hear you overall.
Can you hear me?
It's freezing up a little bit from time to time. I think you can go.
I apologize. It's yeah, this happens, it's Zoom. Well, I'd like to address the wall issue. What I have are pictures of the existing fences, if you're not aware of, is actually out there for our discussion. And what I said is I have a worksheet that shows you where the fence in question is. We do not have a design at this point for there is no proposal. We're still working on that. We're working with the neighbors on coming to an agreement on what would work for them. I will say for the record, and Mr. Rodriguez should be here somewhere, the applicant, that we are trying not to build a wall because of the added expense to the total subdivision. And we can get more into detail with that. And with Carl Sommer has been talking to others about that also. So if you'd like, we can just begin to answer questions.
I have a question related, Mr. Chair.
Hold on. We've still got, so From what I'm understanding, then we're not going to address the wall right now because there's no proposal, just there's some background with the proposal with the neighbors.
I would like to see the photographs that they have in terms of the existing fencing, so we can have an idea of what it looks like, because I understand there's probably going to be comments from the public on that. So a visual would be helpful for me.
And Mr. Chair, I just want to also reiterate that just for the commission's benefit of this, in case this is unclear, these negotiations are still going on and these talks are still going on, but this is also preliminary subdivision phase. We're not at the final subdivision phase. So this is the chance to take a look at this and they can, make recommendations or conditions, however the commission wants to vote, but there will be a final subdivision phase. So just to remind everybody in case it wasn't,
Thank you for clarifying that, Noah.
Thank you, Noah. Okay, well, I'd like to share the screen again. I have some photographs. Hopefully they downloaded. I'm having problems with my internet, as you can tell. So let me see if I can show them to you. I have to show them off my Gmail because they took so long. They're very large files. Okay. So here is all these fences actually on the east side of our property, and you could see where Las Acequias is on the other side of the fence. And so this is looking east towards Las Acequias. This is the typical type of fence. This looks like the original fence that came in years ago. And then as time went by, property owners were, repairing them and replacing them could. This one has been replaced, as you could tell, it's a cedar fence. Then as you go, here's from inside one of the lots looking towards our property, west. And then here's just a typical fence. This is exactly how it looks. Some people have actually replaced their fence with coyote fence. And so, Commissioner Cloud, that's what we're looking at. That's what's existing. That's what we're dealing with. And we can discuss that further if you'd like.
Thank you.
Dave? Okay. And if you could touch on the road design.
Yes, I'd like to turn that over to Orlin, who's our engineer and road designer.
Good evening. Melissa, do you need to swear me in?
Yes.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. I'm Orlin Guerrero Ortiz. Thank you. I'm Orlin Guerrero Ortiz with Design Ingenuity. We're on Louisa Street, but our mailing address is P.O. Box 2758, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87504. The innovative street design, I could show you pictures of it if you'd like, but this Planning Commission has seen it in several cases, and I don't know that we called it innovative before. But in general, what we're doing is wherever we have parking defined, right outside of the parking area, there'll be a parking lane, curb and gutter, and then sidewalk. And the city's standard actually is parking lane, curb and gutter, planter, 5-foot planter, then sidewalk. And the reason we've been doing these innovative designs for the last, 4 or 5 projects I've submitted to Planning Commission is because when people get out of cars in a parking lane situation, they're often stepping into vegetation. And, I don't have kids anymore, but I have grandkids, and it's uphill to deal with the vegetation right next to the parking. Sometimes it blocks the doors from being open. Very often it's an uneven surface. And so there's always been questions of, you know, is it an ideal situation for accessibility? And so I had been working with John Romero. And again, we've been doing this design for about, I think, 2 years. So you've seen several projects where right up against the parking lane, we're putting the sidewalk. It doesn't reduce any amount of cost to the owner. There's still a 5-foot sidewalk. There are still street trees. It's just the street trees are on the other side of the sidewalk. So it's just a function of, instead of having the sidewalk separated from the parking lane by a 5-foot planter, the sidewalk is right up against the parking lane. It is a standard that we use in our commercial district, but the current city code has, in the residential areas, or in, I think they're called local road standards and sub-collector standards, their plans don't reflect that yet. John Romero encouraged me to have the code changed. I've discussed it with staff. Potentially, if there is a code amendment, they all will consider it, because I think staff thinks it's a better design than what's currently on the books. I just believe it's a better design. And so I've been incorporating it into every project I've worked on for the last few years. And I can show you cross sections if you want me to, but I need to have the ability to share my screen. So.
Noah, can you make that happen?
Yeah, so Chair, and thank you, Orlin. It is actually, share screen is enabled for the whole meeting for anybody who wants to share their screen. So
Okay.
anytime somebody wants to share their screen, they can.
Okay, so here is, let's see. So this is a letter that I actually wrote to Noah and Lee. What you're seeing, I hope you all are seeing this.
Yep, we can see.
Okay, good. So what this illustration is the street type in the city code for a sub-collector. And what you're seeing is 2 drive lanes, 10 feet each, and then a parking lane, and then a planter, and then a sidewalk. And so what I'm doing is I'm eliminating that 5-foot planter next to the parking lane. This is the same sub-collector without parking. So the tradition, or the typical design in Aquafina has a 6-foot parking lane and then immediately goes into sidewalk. There still is a planter on the other side. It's not in city right of way. It's on the actual lots. So the trees will be on the lots, but there's still trees going to be located on both sides of the street. But again, the difference is that the planter has been eliminated between the sidewalk and the parking location. As far as the general, where the areas where we don't have parking, the city standard normally calls for 9-foot drive lanes. I make them 10. And I actually make the planter, instead of being 5 feet, I make it 6 feet on the one side of the road that, in essence, the parking goes in and out of. And there's a reason I do that. It's really primarily because I want the center line of the road not to change. It's a better design. It's an easier design for construction. And also the 2 designs that I'm using here are both 45-foot right of way. And so unlike the city standard, they jump between a 50-foot right of way and a 42-foot right of way. That actually is really funky when you actually lay out a subdivision. It's just weird on, that in essence, the right of way is going in and out. And so I worked out with John Romero in the past to make it a consistent 45-foot right of way for a subdivision. And so it wasn't going in and out. And anyway, that's in essence what we're doing. And then there's the only other funky thing about Aquafina is on the first tract A, which is the one that's furthest to the north. We only have houses on one side of the street. So in this case, we are only proposing sidewalk on the side of the street where the houses are located. So that's innovative too, I gather. That was something that I've worked on this project, Aquafina, for, I don't know, more than 10 years. It's been several planning commissions that have seen this project. But that was a design that we worked out in the past with Public Works, with the concept that if the neighbor to the west ever develops, then they would add a sidewalk. But that's considered innovative also. Do you have any questions on this, or should I stop sharing my screen?
One more question. I wasn't quite clear on where the street trees occur in the proposed section.
Okay, the street trees in this section here will be on one. Can you see my hand?
I can.
Oh, good. Okay, so the street trees will be in the planter on one side, and then it'll be behind the sidewalk over on here, which will actually be on private land. And so I think they'll be better cared for, frankly. But anyway, the street trees will be on both sides of the streets.
Okay. And they'll be initially planted by the developer?
Yes, they're required to be planted by the developer.
Okay. Okay, anything else that the commission wants to draw out before we go to public comment?
Are we going to have Chair Hogan?
There'll be another opportunity for question and answer.
Thank you.
Chair Hogan, can I chime in really quick to add on something to Orlin, what Orlin had mentioned about this?
Please.
Okay, thank you. In our code, in chapter 14, there is a provision in the streets section of our code that in 9.2 that talks about a justification for an innovative road design where you can provide standards. So staff asked Orlin to provide some NMDOT data, some AASHTO data that supported this design. And in her letter, she outlines the section in the code where it allows you to present a way to have an alternative street design or an innovative street design. With this letter, we forwarded this on to our traffic engineer who's on contract right now because we don't have a traffic engineer. That traffic engineer reviewed Orlin's proposal and agreed with it. And that's why we brought this forward with a recommendation from our traffic engineer that this satisfies the intent of our street section of our code and that she supports it. And you will see a similar design to this for another subdivision in a few months that will be, or next month, that will be coming before you for preliminary review. So it was recommended for approval by our traffic engineer after reviewing Orlin's letter.
Can we stop the screen share for the public hearing?
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Okay. So if there's no other questions on those subjects, we'll move on to the public hearing. So I'm going to open up the meeting now for public comment.
Here, it looks like the first member who'd like to speak is Fabian Trujillo. Fabian, go ahead and unmute yourself and you'll be allowed to speak. 2 minutes.
Mr. Trujillo, please raise your right hand. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Fabian Trujillo. I'm at 1157 Vuelta de las Acequias, and I'm president of the Las Acequias Neighborhood Association. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. The Las Acequias Neighborhood Association has been working with liaison planning and the applicant for this subdivision. We've had several meetings. We've had compromises on getting with some of the things with the requirement of having site-built homes, and we're very appreciative. We've had our most recent meeting was on December the 28th to have a discussion with regards to the proposal for a wall. That meeting is there's been a request by or promise by Mr. Sumner for a proposal. We still have not received the proposal to have discussions, so we can have discussions with the property owners on that line with some proposals that he's talking about. But we are in the three objectives, or the objectives that we wanted was site-built homes, a wall, and of course, traffic control that's going on to Rufina. And so we've accomplished the first objective during the rezoning process. And so the next piece that we're looking to do is to get a wall. And the reason the neighbors want the wall is because of to keep out the construction debris, the added noise that is going to be over there, and for security purposes. And those are the issues. And so we would like to continue the discussion with Aquafina members and see if we can come up with a compromise like we did with the zoning discussion, so we can move forward with this particular what do you call it, subdivision.
And that was just over the 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Fabian. Who's next?
Chair, if any members of the public would like to speak, please use your raise hand function right now. Or if you're calling in, which I don't see anybody doing that, it would be *9. Chair, it looks like Thomas Gomez would like to speak. Thomas, go ahead and unmute yourself. You'll be sworn in and then you'll be given 2 minutes to talk.
Thank you.
Mr. Gomez, do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Thomas Gomez and my address is 1028 Avenida Linda. And I'm on the border on the side closest to Agua Fria. I have one of the fences there, and I'm truly concerned and asking that a wall should be required on this due to the fact that our border fence that they were showing pictures of, they're in very decent shape right now due to the fact that no one has been behind us with construction and obviously houses, people. I think the wall being built first before all this construction starts is a very good demarcation point, and also for safety for everyone else that is right next to it. These fences have been up for over 30 years, and I don't think that they would be able to survive, a new development coming up without any new demarcation point that's safe for the neighbors of Las Acequias here that border that whole area.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Anybody else?
Chair, it doesn't look like there's anybody else, but I also just wanted to quickly acknowledge what staff members are in attendance for the board to know. Alexandra Ladd is here from Affordable Housing. Dee Beingesser is here for Engineering and Grading and Drainage. Geronimo Griego is here as the Acting Fire Marshal. Leah is here from MPO. And it does look like Maury Walker has joined us, just FYI.
Very good. Well, if there's no other comments from the public, I'm going to close the public hearing. I saw that the applicant, Mr. Rodriguez, had his hand up. Did you want to make a comment?
Yes. Happy New Year, all of you. And
Mr. Rodriguez, we will need to swear you in real quick.
Yes.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I certainly do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Rudy F. Rodriguez. I put the F because my son is the adjoining property. And my address is 701A Los Novatos, Santa Fe. Did you need something else?
Nope. You're welcome to speak, Mr. Rodriguez.
Okay. Thank you for hearing us out. We have been discussing the wall, and it has been, when we started investigating, it is incredibly expensive, probably almost half of what the whole infrastructure is going to cost. Most most of the yards in Las Acequias, I know because we had some properties in Las Acequias, have the cedar fences throughout the properties. And I think they're still existing. I submitted some pictures here that Dolores showed. We walked some of the property when I could back in May, just a little for some distance, and we drove around all Las Acequias, all just adjoining. And if you'll see the pictures that Dolores submitted, the wooden fences are throughout all the properties. Even the street scenes all have the same wooden fence. A comment has been made that the fences will not last all this time. Well, I know the time that we were in Las Acequias and Pavilion 2 probably, and Kent and Mr. Gomez, at least people we had on the property never bothered with the backside of the property. Some even have trees and other stuff against it, or sheds. And most of all, they all have the wooden fences. Even if you drive through the streets, they have wooden fences. From what we have seen in our meetings, we wanted to proceed with the original plan, and the association was dead set against mobile home. That would have been our easy way out. So we compromised, and we did agree to stick-built homes. Now the idea about the walls didn't come up till later, and it put us somewhat in a bad situation. My personal, from the meetings I've attended, where the wall has been brought up, it has been mostly by Mr. Keith Cast. And I don't know, we looked up the assessor's property descriptions and so forth, and his name, and it appears that he doesn't even live on an adjoining property. And I appreciate Mr. Lucero, Paul Lucero, that he is a neighbor. But other than that, we have not have any serious input from the rest of the neighborhood. And we would like to discuss, we'll repair wherever and there is deteriorated fence. If they want us, we'll even paint it on our side, but I don't know what difference it would make to them. But what's going to be there is some nice 14 to 1,800 square foot homes with responsible neighbors like they all have. And that fence, putting a wall if it was me, I wouldn't want the chaos that's involved with removing the existing fence, leaving it open through that time, getting footings in, and everything that goes with building a block wall. And with that, we would appreciate consideration that not to have a block wall, but we will assure the property owners that that fence will be addressed. There's some little sections where they, one property we saw where they replaced it with a new cedar fence. Another one has coyote fence. Some section on my son's side of the property, the other property has a wall, and that is adjoins apartments. So with all that said, we would appreciate your consideration approving it without having to put a wall.
Thank
Thank
you
you very much.
Thank you. Carl, did you have your?
If Mr. Summer wants to introduce facts about negotiating with the neighbors, I would recommend swearing him in, but if he's just arguing law, then he's good to go.
I don't mind swearing in to the degree that I talk about facts. You know, I think you probably should swear me in.
Okay. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. To the degree that I state factual information, I swear that it'll be true.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Carl Summer. My address is P.O. Box 2476, Santa Fe, New Mexico, 87504. Are you all able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay, I'll be very brief. I just like to make a point. When I spoke to Mr. Trujillo and other members of his board, we did make clear that the wall presents a problem, and I wanted to pose that problem because it's a problem that everybody faces in the development community as well as in the home buying community. It's this. This wall will add, if it was, as the neighbors have indicated they want it, that would be a block CMU wall at least 6 feet high. And that cost adds to each home in the development about $7,000 if it's stuccoed. And what that is, and I say that, you know, initially, obviously a developer will pay for that, but we all know who pays for it. Who pays for it is the new home buyer. The new home buyer, that gets figured into their costs and they end up paying that. And what that is it's foisting an amenity that benefits an adjoining property owner who has not bothered to pay the cost of that amenity, foisted onto the neighbor for the benefit of an existing homeowner. That's fundamentally unfair. It's not required by the code. That would be a different thing. If the city said, hey, look, we're going to require you to fence your borders and put up block walls for the reasons of policy reasons, that would be one thing. But what we're talking about here is one group of neighbors saying, we want our neighbors to give us an amenity that we didn't provide for ourselves or that we didn't pay for ourselves. I ask you to consider that because it is fundamentally a shifting of a cost to new home buyers. And it's not easy to buy a home in this town. If you put $7,000 into a cost of a home, that's a lot in a cost of a home of the type we're talking about. So that is one of the reasons that we believe that it's not fair to impose a condition of a wall. We would like to continue the discussions to see if there's some compromise that can be arrived at. Mr. Rodriguez has talked about the idea of taking and shoring up the existing fences, making sure that they're all in good order and repair and stable, so that the concern that they're not going to last or whatever is one thing. And that cost is obviously a heck of a lot less, but it provides the barrier that has been there for forever. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say, and I appreciate your time, and we'd stand for any questions about this.
Thank you, Carl. I just want to make sure I'm clear on what was the comment that was made earlier. The fence issue, wall issue does not have to be resolved at the preliminary state. There certainly can be discussion about it. And if the applicant makes an agreement, that can be included. But outside of that, that can be, we can resolve that at the final subdivision, if I'm understanding correctly. Is that correct, Lee?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, that is correct. The governing body's desire on this was just that it get that the issue be discussed further and resolved at Planning Commission. So yes, that is correct. It can happen at final subdivision approval. I just wanted to, as long as Carl was speaking, I think he might be able to help me on this. We mentioned in the staff report that part of the discussion on the wall or fence all along has been potential property line conflicts. I'm curious if either Dolores or Carl or anybody can kind of confirm, is that a potential issue? Is it a non-issue? Have you guys looked into that? Thank you.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Carl.
Lee, thank you very much. The issue that arises is, as we all know, fences often are not on boundary lines. They're either over or they're within, and it's difficult often to tell whose is whose and that sort of thing. If we are in the, we would have to verify where that line is in relationship to all existing fences along that line. And it could raise a potential issue for people who have fences inside their line or people who've encroached. So it does raise an issue to put a wall along that line. The other issue that it raises is, I'm not sure, I haven't seen the subdivision plat here, but often there are utility easements along the back sides of lots. I don't know if Orlin has designed this lot, this subdivision in that way. I didn't get a chance to, I didn't get a good look at those plans. A wall along those utility easements can present a problem as well. But thank you for raising that, Lee. It's a potential problem we have to investigate, and could give rise to, boundary disputes and the like.
Okay. And if I can, Mr. Chair, if I can just add one more thing. So I appreciate that from you, Carl. And I just want to make it clear, I also asked Las Acequias Neighborhood Association to really put some hard thought into how about that issue if it comes up. You may have somebody who loses some yard, and that email I got from Mr. Cass today seemed to indicate that a lot of people would be losing property. And then conversely, what if you all of a sudden now you have two side fences and now there's a 4-foot gap, and as a Las Acequias homeowner, that's going to become your responsibility to fill. So I did ask the neighborhood association to very carefully consider these issues as well. So just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you, Lee. I'd like to hear from some of the commissioners. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Faulkner. I sense that there's just a lot more discussion that needs to happen between the association and the developer on this wall issue. And I personally would like to give them the time to figure it out before we weigh in on what we think they should do. I think it'd be appropriate to wait till the final approval before we weigh in on the wall issue. It sounds like there's a lot of moving pieces and it's a little more complicated than just putting a wall up. So that's the only issue I would have.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Faulkner. Anybody else?
Chair, Commissioner Garcia and Commissioner Gutierrez have their hands up.
Okay, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and fellow commissioners. Is there any kind of a compromise on this wall? I mean, okay, does it have to be a brick wall? I think Mr. Rodriguez had some offerings of repairing or rebuilding some of the existing walls that are there and making them possibly better than what they are now. They're 30 years old. Is there areas where maybe a wall can be placed partially? Doesn't have to be the full area. I don't know, just talking about some sort of compromise, maybe brainstorming in terms of other possibilities for this. And I can definitely understand where doing a wall on the full length of the property is very, very expensive. And maybe any recommendations from staff or or anybody else there that can offer up something of that sort. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think we're in agreement that this does not, we don't have to hammer this out tonight. That we have time to let the applicant and the neighborhood association negotiate further. I see that Director Isaacson has his hand up. I'm sorry, before I move on, Commissioner Garcia, I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you done?
No, and again, I just bring up those comments and those points so that way the applicant has ample time between now and the final to kind of say, okay, we've talked about this in the preliminary. These are some of the suggestions by staff, by the commissioners, by the community, and then we can finally discuss it in the final when it comes due, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Director Isaacson.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hogan, members of the commission. I just thought it would be useful maybe to point out that on several recent subdivision applications that this body has heard and approved, rather than using separating walls between the subject property and adjacent properties, we have approved coyote fencing. And part of the rationale behind that coyote fencing, one is cost, but secondly, as we've heard in other locations, these long expanses of block walls tend to invite graffiti artists and other types of vandalism that we don't want to encourage. And cleaning of a coyote fence or replacing latillas is much easier than on a split face CMU block wall. And so while this notion of a coyote fence doesn't address some of the boundary issues that Mr. Sommer brought up earlier, it may address some of the questions around cost, achieve many of the same objectives in terms of providing separation, while also providing something that's less of a potential for nuisance in the future.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Centeno.
Chair, I think Commissioner Gutierrez was actually before Commissioner Centeno.
Okay, thanks. I can't tell what order they went up. I missed that. So Commissioner Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow commissioners. Ms. Vigil, how many properties will be adjoining Las Acequias that would be affected by this asking of a wall? How many lots is it?
I'm sorry, who's asking the question?
This is Commissioner Gutierrez.
Oh, Commissioner Gutierrez, I'm not completely sure. I mean, I can get a count on that if you want to give me a minute, but I can tell you what linear feet is of the wall that is being proposed, and that is 4,885. Not proposed, but they're asking for a wall, and the linear feet is 4,885.
Okay, and I'm trying to get to the same answer. So 4,885. Can you give me a cost per linear foot on a 6-foot wall? You or anybody from your team?
Yes, I believe either Mr. Rodriguez or Carl Sommer has it.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Gutierrez, the preliminary estimates that we have from people in the industry is it's about $125 a linear foot with footer wall and stucco, 6 feet tall.
Thank you. And then my next question for Ms. Vigil or her staff, we had another project right up the street, and that had issues with separation as far as Las Acequias fencing and the actual property line. Have you guys had a surveyor or somebody out there staking out this to see if there's a big difference on the Mr. Rodriguez's property to Las Acequias?
I can answer that question. This is Orlin. I worked on the Jackson project, and the Jackson project had a separation of 5 feet from their property line to the Las Acequias existing fences. That was Las Acequias land. This project does not have that situation. The fence lines appear to be near the boundary, the existing fence lines.
Okay, thank you. So this would be line up better than that last project. Mr. Chair, do you mind if I ask Mr. Trujillo Fabiana a question?
No, carry on.
Chair, I'm not sure. Sorry, Commissioner Gutierrez. Chair, I'm not exactly sure on the order how this would happen. So you close the public comment. You have a member of the public who has their hand raised, which is Fabiana, who represents the neighborhood association. So Sally, how would we bring them back in open public comment so that a commissioner can address it, or how would you like to do that?
I'm willing to defer to the chair. It may be appropriate to make sure there's no objections from the commission before reopening it, but it's all right.
No, that's fine. It's okay. We're at preliminary, like everybody said. So I guess my comment is that I'm just wondering what goodwill the association's wanting to bring to a wall that'll benefit both sides, as it looks like the property line is pretty well lined up. So did you guys hear me, or did I mute myself?
We couldn't hear the last part of your comment.
Oh, okay. I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Commissioner Satania.
Yeah, question for Lee. Lee, can you describe why or provide some additional color why the governing body declined the condition of approval that we included to pursue connectivity?
Yeah, I did. After we spoke on the phone, I did go back and look at the minutes, which weren't particularly revealing, but as I described to you earlier, my recollection of all that is, the governing body, briefly discussed that and just kind of said, well, the neighbors didn't want it then and they don't want it now, and the applicant didn't ask for it, specifically meaning connectivity here. And so they just kind of, I think their perspective was that we have a development here that finally everybody can live with, and they decided to let the road non-connectivity, I guess to call it, they decided to let that stand. So they did not take the Planning Commission's recommendation to strike all of applicant undertaking number 3, but only the originally requested half to strike, which was the part about the 3 base course lot driveways. The minutes just didn't reveal a whole lot. In my memory, there wasn't a huge amount of discussion on that. I think they honestly kind of viewed it as, this one got kind of beat up in the past, and, the applicant's not asking to change it. We know the neighbors are still happy with it, and so we'll leave it be.
I can't raise a virtual hand since I'm the co-host, but I could chime in too. I looked through, as you were talking, the governing body's findings of fact and conclusions of law actually do have a finding that speaks to it. It was finding number 43 of these monster findings, and it says, the governing body finds that the first part of applicant undertaking number 3, which is the requirement that the applicant shall not request to use Powerline Road as a primary or secondary access for the subdivision, should be retained based on the intent of the applicant, the opinions of the city traffic engineer as presented at the Planning Commission, and the wishes of the surrounding residents. So that did actually end up documented in there.
Okay.
I think it's important because in the city of Santa Fe, especially with these narrow tracks, we continue to deal with traffic concerns and connectivity. And it makes it difficult for me to continue to vote, whether it's staff working with, the applicant, or, this project has actually been going on and surpasses most of us being on the commission. However, in Chapter 14, 9.2, and I just want this for the record because I know that the governing body has sided with what's convenient. However, street networks, it says, the arrangement, character, extent, grade, and location of all streets shall conform to the general plan and shall be considered in their relationship to existing and planned streets, to topographic conditions, and to public convenience and safety. Furthermore, it states that the arrangement of streets in a development shall provide for the condition or appropriate projection of existing streets in surrounding areas, conform to a plan for the neighborhood approved by the Planning Commission to meet particular situations where topographic or other conditions make continuance of a conformance to existing streets impractical. I don't believe in this case that this is impractical, especially given that there is going to be an easement for Powerline Road for the resident. And I feel like this is contributing to a larger problem in our city, especially with these narrow tracts of land that we continue to have to encounter in the city of Santa Fe. And my understanding why we have these narrow tracts is due to water rights over time. However, there's multiple instances in the general plan where it mentions connectivity, and we are not following the recommendation of the general plan in these instances. And I believe that it is contributing to an ongoing problem. Additionally, what I would like to comment on is that with these narrow tracts of land, that I don't believe that the code is sufficient for our staff to address these issues early on. We know that on these narrow tracts of land where there are single streets or narrow streets regarding parking, that you will find additional cars will park on these roads. This is not being addressed, and I would like to work with staff to potentially address or raise this concern at the governing body so that maybe we can look at addressing this for future cases.
Thank you, Commissioner. Noah, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, Chair Hogan, thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Satania, for bringing that up. I think that there's a few different things that you brought up in what you said that are very valid points. I think that the city has made clear there's no intent to develop Powerline Road. That was an easement from when that subdivision was created, but the city has since pursued other connections. I think it has been a loud concern of this neighborhood as far back as 2011, the first time that this subdivision proved that they don't want direct connections into their neighborhood. So the governing body, through a rezoning process and through an ordinance process, has adopted restrictions and regulations into which the connectivity in terms of power line can be pursued or can't be pursued. In terms of the connections, I think there's, when we're talking about the general plan, we have to also remember that the general plan is something that is usually addressed in rezoning and general plan amendments as we apply the criteria for that into those requests. So I think that there's some of that not necessarily at a preliminary subdivision point in time. That's when you actually use chapter 14 and you use the 9.2 that you recited a few times. I think staff overall felt that the connectivity that was presented in this subdivision met the requirements of chapter 14, and we did run this by a traffic engineer as well. So I do want to clarify for that was some of the thought process. I think that, we also try to work with neighborhoods and neighborhood concerns when evaluating criteria, because I think that's of the utmost importance of those concerns of neighborhoods. And I think that connectivity is continuously a huge concern of this neighborhood and Las Acequias and connections in. And for as long as I worked with the city, it has always become a point that they have brought to our attention and to councilors' attention about development potential in their areas and connections into their neighborhood and traffic in their neighborhood. So I just wanted to bring up a few of those things that, factor into this. Commissioner Satania, I think it's excellent stuff that you're bringing up, and I appreciate that you're bringing up those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Commissioner Faulkner.
I'd like to respond.
Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Satania, did you have another statement?
Yeah, I appreciate it, but I do believe that general plan is very clear in terms of connectivity, and especially given the way this is situated and how we're trying to approve this and how staff has brought this to us. is I'm interested in why track C1 and track C2 are not connected. We have multiple instances on these narrow tracts of land where Agua Fria has no connection to Rufina. So regardless of Power Line Road, which I think was discussed, given that there's a resident that will still have an easement to access across, which everyone seems happy with. But again, we are developing 2 tracts of land and being requested to approve this without consideration of connecting track C1 and track C2 to provide additional connection between Agua Fria and Rufina. And the only arguments that I've heard either from the city or from the applicants is that it's been agreed upon and it's what everyone gets along with. But again, we also have to think about connectivity and how we are dealing with these narrow tracts of land. And I don't believe that's being addressed in this case, and this will be another one that will be pushed along in terms of convenience versus what we are held to do and what staff, what I think should be doing from the start, which is looking early on how to connect these narrow tracts of land, in terms of other main arteries within our streets. And while residents might not prefer that, or there's not in my backyard concerns, we have other obligations of this commission to Chapter 14 and the general plan that I believe should be considered. I have no further comments, Chair Hogan. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Faulkner.
Yeah, I would just like to echo some of what Commissioner Satania has been saying. I think that one of the issues we have as a commission and a city council and in general, we don't have any long-term planning for anything. Every project, we approach every project as if it's an isolated incident, and that how it affects the surrounding communities, how we connect the communities, how we deal with infrastructure needs and demands of the future. We're just cramming a lot of population into a small area with no long-term planning involved. And so this is just another example of not having, of what we will face moving forward if we do not at some point take long-term planning seriously. Because piecemealing everything creates these isolated pockets, and I would think it would make infrastructure very hard to manage. And I just have to echo Dominic, and not specific to this case necessarily, but that this case is just another example of where there's no long-range planning involved in making decisions about a high population and dense population part of town. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Luxon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. I would like to just address one point in both Commissioner Faulkner and Satania's comments. The point is well taken for certain as far as not connecting Power Line Road east-west. But I do have to say, and Ms. Vigil will remember this, and I don't remember if Rudy was on the meeting or not, but there was a time going on 2 years ago, it seems like now, where John Romero, Dolores, myself, Noah, I think Eli was around at that time, I forget. Carol was our director then at any rate, but I think Eli was there. At any rate, we all sat down around a table and we discussed both the Casa de Todos and the Aguafina subdivisions, and the road configuration that you're seeing now, whether it's proper for serving us into the future, we can debate, but the road configuration you're seeing for Casa Aguafina now, and that you will see for Casa de Todos, was approved by John Romero. And in part, his thinking of not connecting north-south on Aguafina was based on creating effectively a continuous speedway all the way from Airport Road to Aguafina, because with one stop sign, somewhere along the way, and not trying to make light of it, but John Romero did configure these roads very specifically with not connecting that one north-south, and then in the Casa de Todos subdivision that you'll see soon enough, having the roads instead of connect just so he had them veer different directions to divert traffic. So I'm not saying we've got all the answers, but given a difficult situation, I think John Romero settled on a road configuration that he thought was the best balance between moving people and connectivity and yet not having a connection that was a potentially dangerous and high speed one. And specifically, that was his concern with the top 2 tracks in Aquafina. That's it.
And Chair, if I could just piggyback off of that to Dominic's point, this was approved by a former land use director and a former traffic engineer, and that's how we moved forward with this project. Those were agreements between our land use director and our former traffic engineer. Eli wasn't involved in those discussions. So I just want to, for the record, clarify that is how the street configuration came to be. The applicant proceeded forward with the direction of a land use director, and at the time, our city traffic engineer, and then engaged their representatives, their traffic engineer, their surveyors to come up with this configuration and the load and the street configuration and the subdivision configuration based on, at that time, those 2 individuals, their direction. So I want to make clear that staff does recognize the need for connections, and we're not bypassing that in any way, shape, or form, but we're just telling you what the direction at the time was.
Thank you, Noah. Commissioner Gutierrez, did you have your hand back up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do agree with Commissioner Satenia about connectivity, and I know we talked about this in the past. If I remember correct, this was the one case where Agua Fria Village was against this connection. If somebody can help me, lead somebody, was this the one where Agua Fria Village was opposed to connecting?
Well, I know, Commissioner Gutierrez, I know that when Las Acequias was built, they opposed a direct connection there, and that was honored. Earlier on in the many discussions on this project, the Agua Fria Traditional Village kind of raised an objection to it, saying that they had approval authority for that section of road, and essentially that they could say you can't connect to this road because it's under the control of the county. But that's not actually the case here. I'm not sure if that's what what I'm recalling is what you.
I think that's what it was. Yeah, I think we were told something about them. Mr. Chair and Commissioner Satenia, it would be helpful when you're talking about this, if someone would put up screen sharing, and maybe Commissioner Satenia would just, I understand what he's saying, but it would be helpful to me to visualize it, and maybe for the people that are also watching or attending this meeting. Thank you.
I'm sure that we can either get Ms. V. Hill or one of the others from the applicant team to put up a graphic if you're needing to show the points of connectivity that we're talking about.
If Commissioner Satenia wants to do it again or just show us, that'd be fine with me. If
I'm happy to comment, Chair Hogan.
Well, let's let the applicant show us.
Can everyone see my screen? I believe this is the area in question, and I believe the question is, why are we not connecting this portion to this portion, which would then create a connection all the way through between Rafina Street and Agua Fria to the north. I think Lee brought up a really good point. I think when we are thinking about connectivity, we may want to be thinking about connectivity more, not necessarily connecting all the way through from Agua Fria to, say, Airport Road, but is there a way to make a connection here and then somewhere else maybe make a connection here so that we have redundancy and more connectivity in the overall system, but aren't creating these sort of thoroughfares connecting all, through to all 3 of our major.
Okay.
Mr. Hogan?
Yes, Commissioner.
Yeah, I would like to speak to a couple points, and I also don't want to get on a tangent because this case is.
I was going to say we shouldn't be debating long-range planning tonight, but we are interested in your point. So carry on.
Yeah, but I do feel like these points are relative to this case, and even though I've mentioned a larger concern, I believe that the general plan is specific. And just to piggyback off of what Director Isaacson stated is that In Chapter 6 of the general plan, specifically, the plan policies, which is Chapter 6 transportation, have been designed to ensure, and I'll read one of 4 of the bullet points, a street network that promotes flexibility of routes and connections between and within neighborhoods is promoted. So I believe that, and to Commissioner Faulkner's point, I respect her concerns about long-term range planning, but I do believe that we already have a plan that points to this. And I agree that with Planning Manager Mr. Burke, that this was done before a lot of people, and this is a best case solution for everyone that's agreed so far. But I still don't agree, even later in this, later decisions, that this is not being addressed or focused on and just another thing to get pushed through. Again, I believe it's perpetuating a problem, and I don't feel that it upholds Chapter 14. So that's the last point that I would like to make.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else that we haven't heard from have comments? Any other questions? What are the wishes of the commission?
Chair, Commissioner Faulkner has her hand up.
Commissioner Faulkner?
Commissioner Faulkner, you have to unmute yourself.
Yep.
I'll make a deal. I won't prolong the discussions on long range planning if we can get it on the agenda sometime soon.
Okay. I don't know if I can make that deal with you, but
Eli?
I'll make a deal with you, Commissioner. You have my word.
Done and done.
I have a question, but I'd like to wait to the end. It's about the road section, if I could, but I may have to let a dog out for 2 seconds. But then I would like to talk to Orlin about the road section she's proposing.
okay. In the meantime, Commissioner Faulkner, you still have your hand up?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
And I was going to make a motion, Commissioner Clow was going to make a motion.
Okay.
I move that we approve the preliminary subdivision for case number 2020-2897, subject to the conditions of approval and technical corrections recommended by staff. And I also move that we approve the preliminary subdivision for case number 2020-2915, subject to the conditions of approval and technical corrections by staff. And I've moved the two together because I understand that they're a package deal.
Commissioner Faulkner to second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Melissa?
Yes, Commissioner Clow,
Yes.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Zatenia.
No, and specifically, I don't believe that it meets criterion number 3, that all plats shall comply with the standards of Chapter 14, Article 9.
Okay, the motion has been approved.
Then I move that we approve the findings of facts and conclusions of law for case number 2020-2897 and for case number 2020-2915.
Commissioner Faulkner to second.
Okay, motion and a second. Melissa?
Commissioner Clow,
Yes.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez,
Yes.
Commissioner Lawrence,
Yes.
Commissioner Zatenia.
No.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Director Isaacson, did you have a closing comment?
It's a question, and maybe something that could be explored between now and the final subdivision. It's a question for Orlin. If you don't mind pulling up your road section, showing the sidewalk on one side and the planter on the other. And the question is, maybe if you could scroll down just a little bit, please, to look at the one below.
This one or the one that's associated with Tract A?
Maybe if you could just scroll to the section at the top. And I don't know if it matters, but the question I would have is there a way to maybe change the way that the road is crowned and the way that we are directing stormwater runoff in the road to explore opportunities for rainwater harvesting for irrigation of the planting strip? It seems that with this road section, there, with interruptions in the curb, and swaling of that planting strip, we could take advantage of some low impact design concepts and other rainwater harvesting.
Actually, if we were looking at the whole grading plan, there's an advantage to this design, because what happens when the parking's only in segments. And when there's no parking, we take that gutter pan directly into the planter. And so we're feeding the flow from the 10-foot drive plus the parking lot into planters. So I think we've accomplished some of the desire for stormwater harvesting, but we only get it in the planters that are in the street right of way. We don't get it on the private property. And we purposely do that because we don't want public waters necessarily going onto private property. So.
No, that I understand. And it's great that, it's hard from from the drawings we've looked at tonight to sort of read.
Yeah,
that.
you can't tell that, but it's actually a thought that went into the design and it shows up in the grading.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, I see Carl has his hand up.
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, I wanted to thank Mr. Isaacson and his entire staff for the work on this project. Again, it's thorough and your staff communicates very well. Thank you very much, Lee, for your work.
Great. Okay, moving on. Our next item is staff.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Have a night. Good night. Okay, next on the agenda is staff communications.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, just wanted to let you know, in case you didn't, that we will be having hopefully some new appointments by next week, next Wednesday. There will be we will present some appointments, or the mayor will, to the council, and there will be some reappointments as well for both Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment. So we'll probably have 2 new faces on the commission if the council approves them. And also that we'll have an election of officers as one of the first items on the January 21st agenda. And then we will be having a meeting in February, on the first week of February, as we normally do, and possibly a second meeting on the second meeting in February, for a second meeting in February. So I know Director Isaacson may have wanted to speak to some stuff as well.
Okay, thank you, Noah.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hogan, members of the commission. Happy New Year. Noah beat me to the punch. I wanted to mention that we were going to have, some appointments on the agenda at the January 13th meeting of the governing body next week. I hope everything goes as we're recommending. I think we have identified 2 really bright and talented folks to join this group, and I'm really excited. I really hope that they're approved by the governing body, because I think it'll be a really nice addition to the great group we already have in place. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Director Isaacson. Commissioner Faulkner.
Oh, I just have my hand raised for when we have issues from the commission.
I'm sorry for. Oh, waiting for the next item. I got it.
For the next item.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other communications from staff?
Nope. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Commission matters from the commission. Commissioner Faulkner.
Yeah, I would really like us to put some priority in 2021 on some policy stuff. And I know Eli and Noah have been awesome. We've been talking about this for, geez, I don't know how long, guys, a couple of, well, 6 months probably at least of making this a priority in 2020. But I do want to let my fellow commissioners know that this will be something that I will continue to be aggressive and proactive on, is digging into having some meetings or some agenda time set aside for us to dig into the general plan and whatever staff sees as policy issues that the commission can help craft or participate in. Again, it's always boggled my mind that we're the planning commission and we do very little planning. And so I just want to thank Eli and Noah for their patience, and then also for their support in seriously considering and promising to help make policy a priority in 2021. So thank you guys so much, but I will be pushing for that.
Well, appreciate that, Commissioner Faulkner, and also just in a way of bringing that to reality, maybe we could ask staff to identify priorities and we'll do a brief presentation so we can talk about what issues that we want to take on, and then go ahead and schedule some time to hear those so that everybody can be prepared.
That would be awesome. I think given just the nature of politics now, and then just the limited resources the city has, staff gets a lot of guff from everybody, but I do know that they work really hard. And in my conversations, I know that Noah and Eli have taken hours of their time to talk to me and to get things. See, Eli's all yes. to kind of get us on the same page. And I just think that we could genuinely help the city. We have some brilliant attorneys, some people our commission is made up of some really smart people. And if we can do some of the heavy lifting while the city's in a place where it needs some help, then I think we're obligated to do so. And it's a duty in a sense. And so I just want to thank the commission for patience on this, and then also thank staff for working with me on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since Pilar the Hammer has laid it down, it's an exciting time in the city. You look anywhere and almost everywhere, and there's something going on building, and it's something that might have run in front of this commission, something we've approved. If we're going to put away some time, I would really like a presentation, staff, on water and where it stands. I know we're doing a great job as far as where we were from years ago, but with all this new building that's going on and stuff, somebody from your department or whatever department handles it, how many water rights are left out there that can be purchased up? What's the future hold for water? What initiatives are being taken for further conservation as we continue to grow the city? So if that's something that at some point we could address, I would appreciate that. Thank you guys for all your hard work, and once again, Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner Gutierrez. Something that we've discussed in the past, either in these meetings or just in one-on-one conversations, is trying to bring in some of the outside experts into these meetings to give short presentations on what they do, whether it be Eric Ani, the MPO director, talking about regional transportation and mobility, or someone like Jesse Roach from the water division, to talk about their ongoing efforts around water conservation. They're doing some extremely interesting studies about water availability now and into the future. And I think it'd be really worthwhile to have someone like Jesse come and talk to this group and talk to those types of issues that you're bringing up, Commissioner Gutierrez.
Great. Depending on how full the agendas are, it'd really be nice to use this first quarter as an opportunity to kind of bring our educational base up on some of these issues, especially since we'll be having a couple of new commissioners join us It seems like the timing would be good for that.
And Chair, I'd also like to say, I think one of the goals of the site, we keep talking about this, like Director Isaacson said, is we just get these jam-packed agendas that is like unrelenting, where we keep saying we're going to do this, and then we get like these items that are going to have like so many people testifying and so many questions. So we don't want to jam it with a 3 hours. So it becomes kind of tricky, and it's not that we've forgotten or that we don't want to do it. We definitely do. We've talked to other staff members from departments about doing this. It's just like carving that time. But I think that the second meeting in February, one of the goals is for legal to present to the new planning commissioners kind of about ethics training and just kind of get them on board too, because now we've got new commissioners. So we do need to give them the stuff that all of you have already heard from legal as well. It just makes it challenging, but maybe I think our goals for sure as our department is to get these things in front of the commission so you can ask questions, hear from the experts, and hear about things like that, and as well as pursuing the long range planning aspect of things as well.
Commissioner,
excuse me, Vice Chair Hogan, just one other thing I'd like to bring up. This is probably something I should have brought up in the previous agenda item, but I'll bring it up now when we're talking about it. Noah and I had a really interesting conversation with one of the commissioners from District 4 earlier this week about the idea of really starting to do some planning open houses. Obviously, they'll be virtual to begin with, but to start hosting some very general conversations about broad planning topics, divorced from the sort of contentious nature of a specific development proposal. Let's start talking about planning principles in the city more broadly with constituents in, say, District 4, District 3, where there tends to be a fair amount of growth and a high number of these types of projects that we're approving. So people can kind of get to understand a little bit of the why behind some of the decision making we make, the why behind why staff would recommend a project versus maybe not recommend a project, and start to understand some of the underlying values and principles that guide the work that we do, both in the land use department, but also on this board. And so that's something we hope to roll out this spring. Lee, I volunteered you to help with that just because you have so much knowledge about the sort of planning challenges and opportunities in Districts 3 and 4 through the work you've been doing through case planning. So that's something we're going to be doing here mid-March, I think, is sort of our target for the first one of these sessions. And I think that's another nice way to start having some of these conversations about long-term vision, planning, and opportunities in the city, to go along with the work we do in these meetings here.
Great. Okay, Commissioner Satania.
How many more of these narrow tracts of land do we got that potentially could be developed in the next, 5 years? I mean, is it worth our time to bring to the governing body, maybe to empower you guys to propose modifications to the, chapter 14 that might address traffic? Or I don't know, Lee, what's your wish list, man?
I might just chime in on this. There's been some talk about, so first there's SWAMP, which is the Southwest Area Master Plan, which talks about some of this area, but I think there's also been some interest from some councilors of doing a corridor study along this area for development patterns along Rafina, where you have a lot of these long, narrow tracts of land. A lot of them, in my experience, have been privately held, where you have one person who wants to develop it. I think you guys remember this. There was like 3 of these on Rafina, but there was like this one missing piece in the middle where that person didn't want to sell. And they had approached that person many times and they just didn't want to sell it, but they wanted to develop all 3 of them collectively, so you didn't have these narrow, thin tracts. So I think that there's some interest from the councilors as well as staff and members of the county and Agua Fria Village to kind of look at Rafina and look at how it could be developed because there's so many of these remnant tracts of narrow pieces of land. And how they could be. So I think there's some of that conversation going on. But I do think, the commission giving direction to staff to look at this is good, to the governing body to explore some of these things. I know Eli's been in a ton of conversations recently about the Rafina Street area. And so I know there's a lot of interest there, and including improving traffic in those areas, you know, at the intersections that we talk about, Rufina and Lopez, and other areas. So, you know, we have been talking about this quite a bit.
And I would add to that, just quickly, Commissioner Setenia, you know, the city's in the process of bringing on a new traffic engineer to the city. And I think that it'll be interesting to see, based off who's brought on board, if there's any change in thinking around these ideas around connectivity and redundancy and traffic networks and things like that. So I'm curious to see where we go as a city in terms of where our priorities are and some of these the requirements we put on applicants on some of these development proposals that we're looking at.
And if I can, I would just add that Commissioner Setenia, you know, you're right. There are a number of these properties around, and there's always somebody who won't sell, won't play. We have that in Aguafina. You know, as you and I discussed on the phone, there's that potential stub to Cielo Azul subdivision, but that guy's never going to sell, you know. And I'll just add my own 2 cents worth to what both Eli and Noah said, that I think the city may have to look at incentives in some way to get people to play ball, so to speak. Traditionally, incentives are density bonuses and things like that. And so that may not, you know, be the kind of incentive we look for, but I think the city is going to have to try and consider ways to incentivize, encourage, mandate, I don't know what, that people assemble tracts of land that can be reasonably developed into something more comprehensive. And the flip side to that is perhaps we have, you know, make modifications to our code that discourage things that, you know, don't, if we're, you know, we either need to encourage this or incentivize it, or we need to discourage the exact opposite. That's just my 2 cents. I don't have the answer, but I look forward to working towards some of the solutions on this as well.
Thank you, Lee. Commissioner Setenia?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to be an advocate for you guys if this is something that you believe that the commission can support you with, or the governing body, because ever since I've been on the commission for the past 2 years and learning about these narrow tracts of land and seeing how they're dealt with, and the neighbors and the people that don't want to sell, that makes your job extremely difficult. And from what I've learned for this most recent case is that coming to find that the code itself could be more restrictive to incentivize, or that there could be things that could be done to support you in your efforts to handle this. And I'm happy to hear from NOAA that there's certain members that might be looking at doing a study, because living in that area, which I do not live, but driving through that area, I can't imagine when we hear about traffic problems and how to develop these areas. I think that we could be doing better, and I think we're going to be seeing more of that, in addition, obviously, to District 3 and 4, which is another topic. But I think addressing these narrow tracts of land might be worthwhile. So I'm happy to be an advocate for you if you want to work together on something. Noah, maybe Noah, you and I can talk or something. I don't know who would be the appropriate person to get some ideas, or how we could support you on that.
Yeah, that'd be great. I think we definitely can, you know, I appreciate that. And we definitely can use the support, and we can definitely arrange a time to talk about that some more.
Okay, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments that hearing everybody talk about the growth of our city, issues such as water. How do we take an old 400-year-old city that looks like a wagon wheel from an aerial topographically design, so to speak, and grow. We're landlocked. We don't have a lot of space to grow outward. So the infill, we do have to be very smart in how these developments are being done? How do they affect the current residents in each in each of the areas? You know, we just really don't have a lot of area to build. And so a lot of the comments, I think Mr. Gutierrez had brought up the water situation. Driving up and down Rufina, driving up and down Agua Fria very often, even on the South Meadows area. And this is where a lot of this major construction is happening. And so I think that we do really have to, as a team, discuss how this all fits and how it's going to look like in a couple of years from now, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. How does it affect our public school systems? And where do all the people that live in these areas go? And so I think it is very important that we have a very high responsibility in working with the council, working with the city staff. And I'm willing to help out in any which way that I can. So please know that I'm out there for any suggestions or any help that anybody needs. So I appreciate all that everybody's doing. Thank you.
Right. I am not seeing any other hands up. Is there anybody else that has anything to say tonight?
I do. Wait, one last thing. Sorry.
Okay.
I always somehow end up being one of the last people talk. Did we ever vote to like make you chair? Is that going to happen?
That I'm glad you asked that. That is going to be next meeting. The first part on the agenda next meeting is the election of officers. So it's not just the chair, vice chair, secretary, I think. So those will be the first things on the agenda on the 21st, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. January 21st.
Clear. That's all I got.
Okay, well, if I can get an motion, we'll adjourn.
No
Maybe
motion.
We need a motion to adjourn. Let's just go.
Thank you.
All right.